ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Beloved Sangat, today we gather not as teachers or authorities, but as humble seekers, drawn by the deep yearning to live in alignment with the divine will. The topic of our Vichar is Seva, selfless service. But let us be clear, that is not a discussion about charitable acts or community work, though those are noble expressions. This is an invitation to see Seva as a spiritual path, a sacred dissolution of the ego, and an unfolding of divine presence in our daily lives. But before we begin the Vichar, I invite you into a short moment of guided reflection. Take a breath. Allow yourself to be still. Let go of the labels, your job, your name, your worries. Just for a moment, rest in the awareness beneath it all. Now imagine someone in need, not a stranger, but someone whose suffering touches your heart. What stirs in you? Compassion, resistance, obligation? Now imagine serving them, not for reward, not for recognition, but as an offering. Feel your heart soften, your identity fade, your hands acting without claiming. You are not helping them, you are simply remembering they are you. Now, take one more breath and return gently. Beloved Sangat, Seva is not just action, it's a way of being. True Seva begins when we let go of the one who wants to serve. Without this surrender, even the most noble deed can become a subtle performance of ego. To serve while absorbed in the divine, that is Seva. Not from pride or identity, but from surrender. This means watching closely. Am I doing this to feel needed, to feel spiritual, or because the act flows from the heart? In the stillness of this awareness, we become instruments, not owners of our actions. The subtle path of selfless service, how easily it can be mistaken for mere do-gooding, for the appearance of virtue rather than its living essence. You see, we in the West are often captivated by action, by doing, achieving, improving. But the wisdom of the divine whispers something subtler. That Seva, true service, isn't merely what you do, but how you vanish into the doing. You may begin with the intention to help others, to offer your time or labor, and this is lovely, yes, but beware. There is a shadow that follows even the most gleaming intentions, the desire to be someone who serves, the helper, the healer, the humble one, what marvelous masks the ego can wear. But when the I who serves fades into the background, when there is no longer a someone helping a someone else, then the dance truly begins. Then Seva is not service done by you, but life flowing through you. It's as if the universe is moving a leaf in the wind and you momentarily are that leaf. To walk this subtle path, you must become exquisitely sensitive. Beloved, ask yourself, not just once, but again and again, gently, without judgment, am I doing this because I am free or because I need to be seen as good? The first is liberation. The second is bondage dressed in robes. When service arises spontaneously from stillness, there is no tension, no effort to be righteous. There is only the fragrance of presence, the quiet joy of dissolving into the moment. Then action becomes sacred, not because of what you do, but because the doer has disappeared. And so, beloved, this is the invitation, not to serve in order to become holy, but to realize your holiness in the very act of serving without self. And in this way, seva becomes not an act, but a revelation, a glimpse into the divine play where all beings serve and are served without separation and without self. And then quite naturally you laugh, because what you thought was you helping them was only the great mystery moving in silence through an open heart. You see, in many traditions, including ours, the path of action without attachment is central. In the Gita, it is nishkamma karma, acting without the desire for the fruit. In Sikhi, it is hukum, alignment with the divine will. You see, when we serve from this place, seva becomes not a burden, but a joy. Not something we do to be good, but something that naturally flows through us. Seva becomes an expression of harmony, of being tuned to the right frequency of life. We are no longer pushing to do good. We are allowing goodness to arise. You see, the Gurmukhs do not try to serve. They become like rivers flowing to the sea effortlessly, nourishing along all they touch. Beloved, seva as alignment, not achievement, is where the whole thing begins to shimmer with a different light altogether. Because you see, in the modern world, we're all rather obsessed with doing things for a reason, with outcomes, goals, accomplishments. Even spirituality becomes another trophy, another stripe on the sleeve of the self. But here's the twist, the marvelous paradox. Real service doesn't come from trying to do good. It comes from ceasing to try at all. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna to act without attachment to results, nishkamma karma. Not because results don't matter, but because the moment you grasp at the fruit, you lose the tree. You lose the presence, the nowness in which action becomes music. And similarly, in Sikhi, the idea of hukum, divine will, isn't some external commandment handed down by a distant deity, but a tuning in, like adjusting the strings of an instrument until it hums in perfect resonance with the universe. Now imagine seva from that place, not as effort, not as a strategy for being virtuous or beloved or even enlightened, but as a natural unfolding. A leaf doesn't push itself to be green. A river doesn't strive to reach the sea. In the same way, the Gurmukhs, the wise ones, the aligned ones, don't try to serve. They are being served through. That is, they have become hollow bamboo, flutes through which the breath of the cosmos sings. And when that happens, there is no longer this brittle distinction between me and the act and the one being helped. There is only flow. Seva becomes like music, played with no audience in mind, no reward expected, played simply because it must be played. The tragedy of modern service is that we turn it into a means to an end. I'll do this so I can be seen as compassionate, or so I can go to heaven, or so I can feel like a good person. But what if goodness isn't something you do, but something you are, when you're no longer in the way? And so you see, the path of true seva is not one of strain or moral superiority. It's about surrendering into the rhythm. When you're aligned with hukum, you're not swimming upstream, you're dancing the current. And in that dance, the smallest action becomes vast. Washing a dish, sweeping a floor, offering a word, these become cosmic gestures. Thus, service becomes not a job but a joy, not an achievement but an alignment. And in that alignment, life ceases to be a problem to solve and becomes a song to sing. You see, in the worldly view, seva looks like me helping you. But in the spiritual view, seva is a tool for dissolving the illusion of separation. The beauty of practices like Lunga lies not just in feeding others, but in manifesting the oneness of all. All sit together, all are equal, all are the divine in form. When we serve with love and humility, the act is completed not by us, but through us. The divine finishes what we begin. This is the revolution of seva. It heals not only those served, but the server too. It undoes the illusion of I and you and reveals only the one light. And so, beloved, seva as the dissolution of other is where we are really beginning to touch the heart of the matter. You see, the curious thing about so much of our human striving, even our noblest intention, is that it's still caught in a game, the game of separation. I am over here and you are over there. I am the helper and you are the helped. And even in our most generous acts, we quietly reinforce the idea that we are two. But what if this whole framework is just a cosmic illusion? What if the entire dance of self and other is like two waves in the same ocean, thinking they are separate beings? This is the great insight of the mystics, the sages, the seers, across the traditions, from the Advaitins to the gurus, from Taoist sages to Zen monks, that there is no other. So when you serve someone, and you do it from a place of deep recognition, not pity, not obligation, not even moral righteousness, but from the sheer clarity that this is myself in another form, then seva becomes something quite different. It becomes a kind of sacred mirror in which both server and served disappear, and only the act remains, and even that dissolves into silence. Take Lunga, for example. On the surface, it looks like a charity meal, a social good feeding the hungry. But look closer. All sit in rows, shoulder to shoulder, regardless of caste, color, creed, wealth. There are no VIPs, no outcasts. And in that simple act of eating together, the illusion of hierarchy is shattered. You are not above, not below, but with. The meal becomes communion, not in the religious sense, but in the deepest spiritual sense. The remembrance that we are not separate at all. And this is where the magic happens, not just in the physical nourishment of others, but in the melting of the self. Because when you serve with love, with no desire for recognition or reward, something strange occurs. You start to disappear. Or more accurately, the idea of you as a separate doer fades. The hands move, the food is given, the smile offered, but it feels as if something greater, something unspeakable is doing it all. And that is the divine finishing what you begin. That is the wave realizing it is the ocean. And that is the quiet revolution of seva. It doesn't just change the world, it changes the seer of the world. It dissolves the boundaries between I and you, mine and yours, until what remains is just light, unnamed, undivided, and shining in all forms. So let your service, your seva, be a meditation, not undoing good, but on undoing the self. Then, in that space where me and you no longer stand, you'll taste the real nectar of seva, not helping another, but realizing There never was another to begin with. And as seva deepens, it changes the way we see. You begin to recognize every face not as a task, not as a project, but as the beloved in disguise. The angry child, the lonely elder, the difficult relative, they're all the same one wearing different masks. At this stage, service becomes love, not sentimental love, but a quiet reverence for the divine spark in all beings. As an example, when Bhai Kanya gave water to enemy soldiers, he wasn't breaking the rules of war. He was breaking the illusion of duality. He saw no enemy. He saw only the one. This is the inner vision Siva opens in us, a way of seeing with the heart, not the mind. So Siva as a mystical seeing is where we're peering to the very soul of spiritual practice. Most of us move through life as if it's through a fog, encountering people not as they are, but as we imagine them to be, helpful or annoying, friend or stranger, ally or threat. We see categories, roles, histories, but not essence, not the shimmering, ever-present suchness that lies beyond every pair of eyes. And here's the marvel. When Siva matures, when it ripens from duty into devotion, it begins to transform the eye that sees. It is no longer me serving you. Instead, we begin to perceive each other as being as a kind of divine theatre, a mask worn by the infinite. And what a play it is. The child screaming in frustration, the beggar reeking of despair, the proud man clinging to his illusions. They are all, every one of them, the beloved in costume. Sometimes ragged, sometimes regal, but always that. And this is why the act of true seva is not limited kindness or utility. It is an invitation into a new kind of vision. A vision not with the mind, always busy, divided and judging, but with the heart, which simply sees not what someone is, but who they are, beyond personality, beyond story. And when you see that way, how could you not serve? How could you not bow inwardly, even as you sweep the floor, bind the wound, offer the cup? Bhai Kanya, the gentle soul who gave water to wounded enemy soldiers, his commanders thought he had lost his mind. But no, he had simply found his soul. He wasn't disobeying orders. He was obeying a far deeper law, the law of unity. The law that says, wherever you look, you are seeing me. To Bhai Kanya, there was no enemy line, just thirsty forms of the one, reaching out for a little mercy. And this, beloved, this is the power of seva, not just as an act, but as a sacred lens. And as you keep serving, the edges between self and others begin to blur. The me who serves, the them who receive become increasingly transparent until one day the whole show dissolves and all that remains is the one, dancing in 10,000 forms and loving itself in each. So let your seva, your service, become a form of sight. Don't serve to fix people, serve to see them. Serve until the illusion of separateness melts, and what's left is only love, not the sentimental kind, as I said, but the fierce, quiet, and wavering love that arises when you behold God in all things. And then, beloved, you will realize something strange and wonderful. The more you serve, the more you are served. The more you love, the more you are loved. For the hands you wash, the tears you wipe, the bread you offer, all of it is the divine playing both sides of the game. And you are the witnessing smile behind the mask. beloved Sangat, action and silence are not opposites. When seva arises from inner stillness, it becomes effortless. When it comes from noise, identity, guilt, or pride, it becomes exhausting. The saints knew this. They withdrew not to abandon the world, but to become so silent inside that their actions flowed from truth. And they returned with clean hands and empty egos ready to serve. In this balance, seva is no longer something we do occasionally. It becomes a way of life, a rhythm, a remembering. We sit in Simran not just to feel peace, but so our hands may serve in love. And so seva, rooted in the silence, is where the apparent paradoxes begin to collapse, and you find that once seemed like opposites are in truth two sides of the same coin. Because, beloved, you see, in our modern busy lives, our modern understanding, action is often seen as noise and silence as withdrawal, but this is a fundamental misunderstanding of both, of the nature of both. True silence is not the absence of sound. It is not merely the muting of the tongue or the escape from the world. No, real silence is spaciousness. It is the deep, still pool beneath the ripples of the mind. And from this silence arises a quality of action that is altogether different, unforced, unhurried, and unburdened. Now, think of this. Most of our doing is drenched in effort. We act from identity. I am someone who serves, or from guilt, I should help, or from pride, look at me. How compassionate am I? And though the outer deed may appear virtuous, inwardly it creates a subtle tension, a performance. It's like trying to carry the river in a bucket. But when seva rises from silence, it's no longer you doing it. There's no actor behind the action. It's just movement, like wind rustling leaves or rain falling on dry ground. And that, you see, is the highest form of action, not one rooted in will, but in harmony. It's not about doing the right thing because of an ethical code, but because it's the natural thing, the only thing. And this is why the saints retreated, not to renounce the world, but to listen more deeply to it. They went into forests, caves, into long hours of Simran, not to escape responsibility, but to dissolve the noise that corrupts it. They quieted the inner commentator, the inner scorekeeper, until there was only presence. And from that presence, seva flowed like a river, pure, anonymous, unstoppable. And when you are rooted in silence, seva is not occasional. It's not a volunteer shift. It is your way of being, like the tree that gives shade, the flower that offers scent. You serve not because you must, but because you are that. Seva, the service becomes rhythm, like breath, like heartbeat. You don't do it, you are it. And so we sit in Simran in remembrance, not just to feel spiritual or calm, but to clear the channel, so that the hands may move without grasping, so that love may work through us, not from us, so that seva becomes less of a doing and more of a happening, a divine echo rippling out from stillness. And then, beloved, something subtle shifts. You realize that silence is not the opposite of action. It is the source of sacred action, the root beneath the fruit, the unseen song behind the seen gesture. From that root, everything grows naturally. And the most beautiful part, no one takes credit, not even you, because in silence, there is no one left to boast, only the joy of the one serving itself in 1,000 humble forms. And so, finally, what begins as service becomes surrender. And what begins as surrender becomes union. You see, there is a point where there is no longer you doing seva. There is only the divine moving. When I was, God was not. Now God is, and I am not. Bhagat Kabir. This is not poetry. This is liberation. When I was, God was not. Now God is, I am not. Beloved, seva takes us to the edge of the ego and gently asks us to step beyond. And when we do, we don't lose ourselves. We find the self that was always one with all. And so seva is liberation. Here, we are no longer speaking merely of action or duty or even devotion. We are entering the domain of the unspeakable, the ineffable, the grand joke of existence in which the one who seeks liberation vanishes into the very thing we were seeking. You see, beloved, when we first approach seva, we often do so from a place of earnestness. I want to help, I want to serve, I want to do good. Yes, noble intentions, yes, but still clinging to the root illusion, I. And so even in seva, the ego can sneak it disguised in robes of righteousness. It whispers, look at me, being selfless, which of course is not selfless at all. But if one continues patiently, humbly, gently, something begins to shift. What begins as service becomes surrender. The hands keep moving, the feet walk, the food is served, the wound is dressed, but the sense of me doing it starts to wear thin. As if you were once swimming through the current and now you are the current itself. This is what the mystics have been pointing to all along, not as an abstract metaphor, but as direct experience. Bhagat Kabir says it so plainly. When I was, God was not. Now God is, and I am not. This is not some poetic flourish. This is the very heart of liberation. The dissolution of the separate self into the whole. Not the annihilation of being, but the dissolution of boundaries, the imagined walls between me and the divine, between doer and deed, between self and other. You see, beloved, the ego is always trying to hold the reins, to be the driver of the chariot. But seva, true seva, takes you to the edge of that illusion, asks very sweetly, very quietly, why not let go? And when you do, what a release it is. Because you don't fall, you fly. Not as a person gaining wings, but as the sky remembering it was never the bird. And here's the great twist. You don't lose yourself. You lose the idea of yourself, the cramped little story of me as a separate doer, and in its place, you find the self that was always already free, the self that breathes through every being, that shines behind every eye, that gives without thinking and loves without reason. So in the end, seva is not just a spiritual practice. It is a portal, a dissolving, a remembering. You move from helping others to surrendering the I, to merging with the very source from which all service, all seva flows. And what's left? Only the divine, playing all the parts, only the dance, dancing itself, only love, unbound, unnamed, pouring itself into the world through the hands of no one at all. And so, beloved Sangat, if any of these words have touched truth, it is by Waheguru's grace alone. And if any part has missed the mark, I ask for your forgiveness. I am not a teacher, only a fellow traveller, learning, forgetting, and learning again. So let us walk this path together, our hearts open, hands ready, Let our service be light and invisible. Let our every act be filled with Naam. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.